Evelina mai kako, and welcome to the Hawaiian Kingdom podcast. Evelina mai kako, and welcome to the Hawaiian Kingdom podcast.
Aloha mai kako, and welcome back to the Hawaiian Kingdom podcast. My guest today is someone who has spent years telling Hawaii stories. As a journalist, storyteller, and broadcaster, Kamaka Pili has interviewed everyone from community leaders to politicians, athletes, and cultural practitioners. But one conversation in particular caught my attention, his interview with Dr. Keanu Sai, that challenged many people to look more closely at Hawaii's history and to ask questions they may have never considered before.
I didn't expect you to say no on that first question, so let's just go to that. Was the Hawaiian Kingdom illegally overthrown in 1893?
What was overthrown was the government of the Hawaiian Kingdom, not the Hawaiian Kingdom as a country.
What's the difference?
So in international law, they separate the government from the state. The state is like what they call the independent state or the country, right? So an example would be Japan. So when Japan signed the Treaty of Surrender in 1945, that did not mean Japan ceased to exist. That was just a surrender by the government. And that started the occupation of Japan that went from 1945 to 1952, when there was a treaty of peace that settled the war. But Japan was still Japan all the way through. And that's the significance of Hawaii being an independent state since 1843, that it is protected by international law. Even though we don't know what international law is, it's still protected.
Interesting. Okay, going back to your other no answer, Hawaii became a state in 1959. No.
No, because Hawaii is still its own country, then its sovereignty and its laws apply over its territory even during occupation, just like Japan, 1945 to 1952. So the United States could no more create a state of Hawaii to be applied or imposed in the Hawaiian Kingdom than the United States Congress could create the state of Japan imposed in Tokyo. Right? Because American laws are limited to American territory, Japanese laws are limited to Japanese territory, and Hawaiian laws are limited to Hawaiian territory. And that goes to the heart of being an independent state.
So then I'm confused being where we are today then. I mean, is that safe to say that we are all confused in this whole kind of a conversation today?
I think we've been misinformed, right? Because there was a deliberate move done in 1906, a formal policy of denationalization through Americanization. It came out of the Board of Education. And the purpose of that policy, which is my tutu's generation, right, was to destroy the national consciousness in the minds of school children, meaning any memory of a country. So all my grandparents were taught was how to speak good English and American history, and that Hawaii is a part of the United States. They never explained about what happened in 1893, what happened in 1898. So within 3 generations, that brainwashing through Americanization became institutionalized. So by the time it reached my dad was at St. Louis. He was born in 1939. He didn't know anything. When I was at Kamehameha from 1978 to 1982, out of sight, out of mind. In fact, I went to a military college to get a commission as a second lieutenant in the Army Reserves.
Really?
So we're all victims of it. But what cuts through that false narrative is historical accuracies, academic research, right, which is important, as opposed to what has come to be known as anecdotal research. So anecdotal is storytelling, right? So anecdotal research normally begins with a person's bias, whatever that bias is. And then they go out and try to find stories or anecdotes that confirm that own bias. As an academic, it is important that it ties into what is called critical thinking. And critical thinking is not being a critic. Critical thinking is asking the right questions, right? So instead of saying, okay, well, this is a state of Hawaii, the question would be, what is a state of Hawaii, right? And then as you look into what is a state, then through the research, you're going to realize that this is the state of the Hawaiian Kingdom, an independent state since 1843, which is under occupation. So that's how you get to these points. So you don't start off with, I'm going to prove what I believe. No, that's rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of convincing. That's what politicians do. Academics go through, when they publish their manuscripts in academic journals, it goes through what is called peer review, right? So in the case of, let's say, Oxford University Press, they have a peer review process, which is a double-blind review. So a person that wants to submit a manuscript for publication, Oxford University Press or other journals, academic journals, would identify reviewers that have expertise in what is covered, right? And the author of the manuscript has no idea who the reviewers are, and the reviewers have no idea who the author is. So all they do is they look at the manuscript and they try to poke holes in it, right? That way they're not being biased because they don't know who's behind it. And if it withstands the reviewer, that process called peer review, then it gets published. So that's
Makes
very
sense.
different than anecdotal research in trying to prove you're right. No, you gotta allow somebody to prove you wrong. Then what comes out is, hey, you was right.
I like that.
Whether you're hearing these ideas for the first time or you've spent years studying them, today's goal isn't to tell people what to think. It's more just to explore how these conversations matter, how journalism shapes public understanding, and what role every one of us plays in preserving Hawaii's history and culture. Kamaka, mahalo for joining us.
Well, hallelujah for having me, and I appreciate it.
Everyone knows Kamaka Pili, the reporter, but who is Kamaka Pili when the cameras are turned off?
Well, first of all, you said years of storytelling, which just makes me look super old, first of
Oh,
all.
sorry.
So I want to
Kalamaya.
correct that. I stopped aging at 27, so we'll just keep that at that. But I appreciate that. What was your first question? I'm sorry. I
Oh
got
yeah,
caught off
just
guard.
no problem, Kalamayo. Just we see you on TV,
Oh,
and yeah, who are you? When the cameras are turned off.
I'm this scatterbrained all over the place.
Love it.
No, I'm just somebody who I I'm so intrigued in history and the things that are around me. And I just try to find out who I am and along my journey, if it's in the books or if it's just outside, just finding who I am in the space that I stand in. It's all a learning journey for me. So yeah, that's kind of what I bring. And fortunately, it worked in a journalist setting. It worked in front of a camera setting, and all of that for me, who believes in God, and I have my faith in that. It's exciting to see where my journey will lead, and that's kind of the space that I'm standing in today.
Oh, mahalo, mahalo. Appreciate you. What was your childhood like, and what did Hawaii mean for you growing up?
I was not actually. People they think I'm an expert, which is
Mm,
I've never really was around deep Hawaiian culture growing up. That was something I learned, especially in high school, and been inspired to begin a deeper journey since then. But that's
mm,
not to say I didn't have the cultural setting around me. I mean, local lifestyle. I'm born and raised in Kailua. I'm fourth
oh, beautiful.
generation, so it's a beautiful space, and just my journey, my lifetime growing up in Kailua, I've seen drastic change, and then learning about the drastic changes that had come before me, for me, it becomes a personal thing. So a lot of the things I like to do professionally, I guess, is actually a personal thing for me.
When you're learning your own mo'okuʻau, how's that changed the way you see yourself?
In high school, when we first started to do this, in terms
Mm,
of learning our mo'oku auha, what did that even mean, breaking down the word and kind of seeing it from a broader perspective, I was able to go, at least from one side of my family. I was partially raised by my tutu, and my tutu, she's from
mm.
Waialua here, and she was born February 13th, 1916. And she passed away just a couple of years ago at 108.
Well,
So having
108.
that
Sorry.
108 and a half, when
And a
you
half.
turn
Oh my gosh. I
18,
was
you
when
stop
100.
using halves. Yeah. And then when you're 108, you use the half again. But that was also part of my upbringing. So
Incredible.
for me, it's been such an opportunity to be inspired by all these types of stories. And growing up in Kailua, seeing the changes, is it's just an inspiration to continue to go on and to learn these stories more. But in high school, because I had my tutu for that side of my family, she was my dad's mom's mom, so three generations back.
Wow.
And because I had her, that I felt like, oh, that's so cool. But then even asking her, who's your grandparents, and then trying
Mm.
to learn further from her, she was challenged because you had a lot of her own challenges in the family, and I guess um, stepfather and father and different, all of things that I didn't really understand. So I couldn't go really any further than four generations back from me. And then when I learned stories, we always hear this seven generations, seven generations.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was always the goal. Like, oh, I want to be able to go to seven generations back. And then when I read more stories, I realized, and this is as I'm getting older after graduating high school and college, that it was typical. Forget where I seen this from, but on average, every person in ancient days could go back at least like 11, 12 generations on a normal kind of a thing. And
Right.
realizing where we are now, I mean, asking other people, who's your grandparents? Who's your great grandparents? Who's their parents? A lot of us are, oh, I don't know, and it's such, for me, a realization of a disconnect of where we stand now compared to where our kupuna was. And it's not like, I think, you know, um, well, I don't know how people can look upon that, but for me, that's an urge to go and learn.
Mm.
And as I use that as a spark for me to learn, you're getting into all these different resources and talking to these different people, which I get chicken skin every time when I learn something new, because it's like, oh, that's fascinating. So you start to learn so much more in the
Mhm.
journey of learning who you are. And I think a lot of that you don't expect it. And like for me now, I mean, you say all these years I've been on this stuff. For me, I feel like it's just I'm still such this newbie in front of a camera, and it I'm coming from a standpoint of I'm very introverted. I'm very quiet. I'm very to myself. So speaking out loud has been a challenge for me within itself, and I think that's part of my journey of taking this kuleana today, is because I've seeing now that the challenges or the things that I felt were my weaknesses growing up as a kid has become my strength in a sense. And that's kind of in a sense that's what I'm utilizing to build my career, or to build what, this path that I'm trying to go down in this kuleana of being a storyteller. And I think I've come to the point, like, that is my kuleana. I'm a storyteller. And in whatever facet that looks like, we are all storytellers in a sense. But for me, just the fact of learning knowledge, and some people ask, like, well, what's the point of knowing that? I don't know. But knowledge is power, and you never know. I mean, from a
Never.
speaking skill set side, I'm very awkward when I get into socializing. Like, honestly, I'm horrible at socializing. Meeting new friends, oh my gosh, it's so like I kind of just stay in my own space.
Mm.
And people kind of trip out because, like, you're talking to so many people. Like, yeah, I can talk to people, but then when it's coming to socializing and really just sharing yourself, I get super awkward.
Mm.
So the fact of putting myself in front of a camera has got to me this far. For me, it's all a God thing. And I feel like this is skill wise, putting myself in front of the camera, being a storyteller, is only making me a better person and learning how to strengthen this space that I felt like I was weak in. And when I can get better, and I look at where I come from, like, my gosh, man, I've done so much more than I feel like I've done, until I stop. I turn around and you see the journey that you've come down. So going back to the whole mo'oku au question, that learning who I am is not just me learning my culture, and not just learning me in the sense of where I come from and who my people are and what learning who my kupuna are, but it's learning who I am as a person and how I can balance being a Hawaiian and being a faithful Christian. Aloha Authentic, I've done an episode with Kahu Ken Makuakane down at Kauai Ha'o Church.
Mhm.
And the whole episode was built off of how can how is it possible that Hawaiians can be practicing Hawaiians in their culture and their understanding of their history, and not negating anything from that, and having high regards and respect, but also having faith in the God that not everybody looks upon as being a great faith, and sees the negative to it, which I don't negate that. And I don't step into the space to debate that, because part of this journey is, this is my journey. So
Right.
having this conversation with Kahu can down at Koʻihoʻi Church, just from his kuleana standpoint as the kahu, as being a practicing Hawaiian in his own space. The conversation between him and I get chicken skin now thinking of it because I understood what he said. I could understand that his response of me asking questions was questions. And in that
Mhm.
sense, social media wise, and all the comments and the mana'o that is left, some by chirpers, but some who have come and left that by their faith and their belief,
Mhm.
not debating or negating any of that. For me, some of their questions were, well, he didn't answer the question. For me, like that's what our kūpuna did. He may not have answered the question with the answer, but he left you with the question that made you think of what the answer may be for yourself.
Hmm.
And it's a very humbling experience because for me, as a faithful Christian native Hawaiian who understands and appreciates my history, I can see me balancing myself in both because they're complementary to me.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean that it's my journey is for all Hawaiians. It's my journey. And I
Right.
feel as a society, in a bigger picture, that's something we all need to learn how to work with as a society is to agree to disagree and understand that our journeys are our journeys, but we can have respect for others who are on theirs. If it
Mm.
comes to being gay and the whole LGBT community and this whole issue today, or any other issues that we may disagree, politics, I have no desire to even talk about politics because it seems to have it's hard to have honest conversations, I feel.
Yeah.
So learning about my mo'oku'au, how brings my awareness to this whole grand space, as grand as society. So
Mm.
it's not just learning about my family and my genealogy, but it's learning who I am in the space we live in today and how I can balance I have anger issues and I have mental health issues. I have all of this. It's part of my process of healing in my own space. So I think when we can look at anything like that, I mean, that's just how I feel God made me. And it's how I learn who I am and how to be today. So that's how I feel as a Hawaiian and as a Christian, as a member of our society, as whatever. That's what culture does to me,
Mm.
is having this base of, and the kuleana of being able to learn and share. It's a personal journey for me to be who Kamaka Pili is next to my neighbors and as just somebody in our lahui today that contributes to one another. That's such the long way around, but that was my
No,
answer.
no, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I hope all that
Um,
made sense.
yeah, it does. I took a class actually with a Buddhist teacher, believe it or not, and he worked with Haunani K. Trask, Dr. Ron Williams, and they were trying to prove this narrative of, colonization in Hawaii through Christian missionaries. And Ron Williams' dissertation went out to kind of seek those stories. And it was really interesting because what came back in his research was kind of the opposite. Like Hawaiians were using Christianity in a way to, preserve, protect their culture, and even, protect their ʻea and their sovereignty. Like the Kuwait petitions that we saw today, I wouldn't doubt if one of them was signed, inside a church. We were very much a Christian nation in the 19th century, but we also respected our culture, right? So having that balance is so important. I grew up, my kumu was Pua Case, who started the Mauna Kea. Well, I shouldn't say started, highlighted. It's I'm from the Big Island, so we've been dealing with that for a while. So, but and hats off to her for keeping the culture alive and the religion, right? The old Hawaiian
Mhm.
religion. I think as Hawaiians, we don't know much about the Hawaiian Kingdom. We don't know its laws. Like we had a article in our Constitution that said that we believe that men are free to worship God, our akua, according to the dictates of your own consciousness. So freedom of religion, right? Which a lot of countries in
Mhm.
the 19th century didn't have. Many
Mhm.
countries even today don't. So I really appreciate that, and for being bold and sharing your faith, and just a little bit more about you for the audience to learn more about Kamaka. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, it goes back to your first question. Who am I
Yeah, who am I? Yeah.
outside of the journalism? This is
And do we ever get a final answer in this life? Who, right? We are always
not at all.
inventing. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. You in Nalu, right? You surf?
Yeah.
That's that's a sport.
All other sports other than surfing and canoe paddling.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's cool.
That's it.
When did you start surfing?
Oh, my dad's an old school surfer. I called him an
Oh,
old school surfer. So ever since I was a little kid, he would always take my brother and I and my mom. We would always go down to the beach. I really got into it though as I got older. I
right.
was really more nervous. So my
Mm,
brother was much more of the surfer growing up, and I would kind of just be on the shore with my mom, play on
nice.
the shoreline.
Right,
Um,
right.
but as I got older, I started to really get into it more, and yeah, so it's been a
Okay.
lifelong journey for me too.
So why journalism?
It was a God thing for me. I didn't
Mm,
expect it. And it really just landed in my lap because I'm one who just kind of goes with the flow. Where the
mm,
trade winds blow, that's kind of where I'm going. I never really have, what's your dream? And for
mm,
me, my dream, I guess, has always been just making sure that I can provide for my family. That's my dream. And hopefully, in the way of doing that, it becomes something that I love doing. So it's not really a job. But
mm.
it was back in 2017, a Halloween night. I was sent a video of a boy who was spray painting the statue of Prince Kuhio in Waikiki. And when I graduated from college, I worked at Bubblegum's restaurant, and
Oh,
one of my friends back then,
yeah.
he sent it to me and he said, I know this is going to make you really angry. So do whatever
Mm,
you want to do with it. Just don't mention my name. So
right, right,
I was
right,
like,
right.
okay. I took that, and at that time, I already started to do my street segments
Mm,
very shallowly. I just started. I had one of my mentors at the time was taught me how to build a website, and I started to just put the videos that I was doing on social media, and just I had a few on my website. And when he sent me this, I didn't know what to do. I just figured, oh,
mm,
I was so angry, and
mm,
what I figured I should do is just, if cultural knowledge was somewhere in the news,
mm,
maybe stuff like this wouldn't have happened. So I found every single email address I could find on all the three different news stations. I don't know who they were. I just found every single one. And I emailed every single email address this video with my website URL. And I just proposed the idea that, if we had more cultural knowledge integrated in newscasts, then it would be a win-win-win for everybody because
mm,
the community would win because they're learning who they are for free in a world that you typically would have to pay somebody to teach you who you are, which is rightfully so in the world that we live in today. It would be a win for the station because then the station is being looked upon by the community as one who cares enough to do integration of cultural knowledge for them to learn for free. And then it was a win for me because I needed a job at the time. So it
there
was
you go.
fortunate that KHON was the only one that responded and said, "Yeah, let's come in and let's just talk story and see what we can do." And it all was right time, at the right place, right time, because KHON just started a new component to their morning newscast,
Mm,
which is called and still is called Take Two. And it's a 1 hour program following the morning newscast that continues to share news but integrates more of a lifestyle,
mm,
easy flowing and a easier way to kind of a more fun way to have the news. So they needed more content, and it was perfect timing when I proposed this idea because I already had my own social media content kind of slowly building. I didn't know what I was doing and not really any structure, just doing whatever I knew how to do and just try to do it well. And so they said, yeah, we need content. So what if, well, they didn't say we need content, but yeah, we'll give you the opportunity if you're willing to do this on, a voluntary basis. What would you be willing to offer? So I said, oh, I can, once a week, maybe, come down. And so once a week, I think it was every Wednesday, I would get down there. I would wake up so early. I'm not a morning person. So I would wake up early to get down there to have a 4 or 5 minute live interview of a street segment. And I would show the street segment for like 2 minutes, a minute or two. And then the next 2, 3 minutes, we would kind of just talk story with the anchor, dive deeper into what it meant. So I did that from January of 2018. And then as we got into March, into April, around March, I got a email that the news director said, come into my office, and I felt like, oh gosh, I said something I wasn't supposed to say. Like I think I'm getting let go from this
mm,
internship kind of opportunity. But
yeah.
she pulled me in and she's like, oh, the weather position is going to be coming up. Would you be willing
Mm,
to apply. And I'm like, oh, I don't know nothing about the weather. And she then brought in Justin Cruz, who, first of all, is the coolest dude in the news industry, hands down. And he became a
Awesome.
mentor of mine. And I remember one of the first things he says is, no worry, first of all, I got you. Weather is patterns, and you'll learn the patterns over time. So it's kind of just being a storyteller. You get these reports from the weather people and you just tell it in your own way and you'll learn these patterns and it's learn on the job. So I applied. I was okay, I'll be willing to apply and try, and I applied for it and I ended up getting it, and I started in April of that year. And
Oh wow.
then that's how I got in, was just emailing them with an idea. And it kind of, looking at it now, it's like I would like to think to myself that it was a position that was created because of the effort that I gave. Because from there, I was able to bring in Aloha Authentic, the TV show, which I started back in 2014 at Olelo Community Media.
Yeah.
And that was started through a artist association that I was a part of. So I was a co-founder of that, along with the association and my mentor, Terry Funakoshi. And we started Aloha Authentic together because it was an artist association. So the whole idea was that we could bring more attention to the local artisans, because myself as an artist, I have Na'au Wala'au Designs, which I started in 2013, stamping t-shirts with Ohe Kapala stamps, and that I made
Wow.
myself. I went up to Pili, went inside the forest, harvested my bamboo from what I learned in hula when I was at Hilo, started to stamp my own shirts, and I started my designing. I don't know what I was doing. And I
Wow.
came across this mentor of mine, and she started to help me. And I was at a craft fair once. We had all my shirts and I had pillowcases, I had lamps, shades, and things. And I was just telling stories of all these designs to other people that were there. And then one of the ladies, not knowing who she worked at Olelo. So she came up and she's like, would you be interested in hosting your own show on TV, just sharing all these stories? And I'm like, oh, I'm somebody who I'll dial to try something once, and if I don't like it, then I won't do it again. But you
Right.
can't knock it until you try it. So I was like, yeah, I'll try. I'm the shy person. I don't know how to do all of this. I mean, in school, I'd love to do all the computer stuff and the TV and play with the TVs, but on the inside, I never really was comfortable. I did do the morning news when I was in high school, but that was like my first step into just having fun in school and kind of breaking that mold of being shy, that never expecting to work in the news, first of all. Um, so then when I started, I went for it, and I went down to um, King Intermediate in Kaneohe. They have a mini studio over there, and I would just bring all my pareo that I stamped for my designs that I was selling, and you go inside the studio, and I just uh, clipped it, like you're clipping laundry with the laundry pins. And that was my back setting, because I wanted it to be unique. I didn't want to go in there and just use everything just generic like everybody else. I'm like, I'm not everybody else. You got to treat yourself. And that was one of the things my mentor always told me is, you are your brand. You are your brand. So when you think Nike, Nike's not a company that is separate from you. I mean, as you know, for them, that's how I always looked at it. When you look at these brands, Nike and all these other, I can't think of any other brands on top of my head now, Apple and all these things. What comes to mind when you think of those brands? That is who you are. So if I'm this artist, if I'm this entrepreneur, and if I'm somebody, a culture practitioner, who my personal and my professional, they're one and the same for me. My personal life is what I do now as a profession. Um, you are your brand, so always reflect that. So I was like, I'm making everything myself, and I made all these pareo. Hung them up, and it's, it is what it is. I look at it now, and I'm like, that's so tacky. That is super tacky, but whatever. Um, and then that's where I came up with the idea of uh, having this bowl. So today on Aloha Authentic, when we shoot it, which we're on a hiatus now, and I'm bringing back the show, trying to figure out how to do it on my own ever since I stepped away from the station. But when we first started, I brought out this umeke in this bowl, and the whole idea was we can eat poi when we started it and just talk story. Because I would just say, I'm gonna have this show, and the whole idea is that we're just in the backyard talking story, hibachi, having a beer and eating some poi, and we're just talking story, like, hey uncle, tell me a story. Like, that's the kind of feel I always wanted. So at first, today the umeke inside is we don't mix the poi anymore, because it was well, first it stopped when COVID, but we would always mix poi inside.
Mm.
Um, but the bowl symbolically today has become a Hoʻailona would be the right way to say it, but it's that the symbol of you know, we can agree to disagree on these conversations that we're going to have on Aloha Authentic. And that's why we started to have the conversations of Hawaiian and Christianity. That's why we started to have conversations of Mahu, because it's more controversial. But just because it's controversial, that doesn't mean we can't talk about it. We're
Mm.
educated and we're adults that we should be able to sit at a table and agree to disagree, but we can learn about it. And that's what the umeke had become. But at first, it was a bowl, and try to eat poi, and I realized you cannot eat poi and have a conversation without hearing the and then
Yeah.
taking the time, like, wait, hold on, I have to get it down my throat first.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so it's like, okay, actually eating the poi and talking story doesn't work. We shouldn't do
Mm.
that. And then I tried edamame, and then that's the one where you're eating the edamame as you're just sitting back in the backyard, the field, and
Yeah.
then you hear them. Okay, like, no, you can't eat edamame. I'm like, okay, maybe we're just not eating. I mean, if there's something that we can, but all of that is, I've come to realize, also a little distracting from the conversation.
Mm.
Um, and that's how Aloha Authentic started. So when I got into the news, long story short, taking it back to the question you was asking, I already was doing Aloha Authentic by the time I got into the news. So when I got into the news, the K-High channel came about, which was a new channel and for KHON. So then now they had two channels and they
Mm.
needed more content on that new channel. So I approached my boss. I was like, well, I have this program I've been doing and I've already have content. Can I just bring it over and maybe bring it to KHON? And they're like, yeah, that's perfect. So we revamped it in a way. And when I did that, he's a good friend of mine now, and he's my producer for Aloha Authentic, Reese Kaneshiro. And I was so blessed to be buddied up with him because our relationship has been so good with with Aloha Authentic since it's been with KHON, which we've done 4 seasons, I believe, 5 seasons we were in. I can't remember now off the top of my head.
Mm.
That we were with uh, KHON, and each season was 12 months because it was just every month of the year we kept going, going, going. Um, so we kind of revamped it, and Aloha Authentic since Olelo into KHON had been much more focused on culture because in Olelo it started off with more local artisans and giving us, let's hear the story of your product because
Mm.
everybody wants to know the story. So artists out there, if you're selling stuff, express the story of your products because that is the selling point that people really want to. Sales is all about connection. Like if you can connect with the buyer, it doesn't matter if it's just a pen. If there's a story to this pen that somebody can connect you, this could be $200 or $300 and they'll buy it because
Mm.
of your story, which really for me elaborated another layer of storyteller. That to
Mm.
me is that layer is I can make money being a storyteller, not to be greedy, but a livelihood. So I'm on this journey now of ever since I stepped away from the news station. I I am not being arrogant, but I know I have talents and I know I have something I can offer in the sense of creating my own path. So I'm trying to see if I can be my own boss now before having to be forced to get another job. um, but
Wonderful.
that's how I got into the news station, and that's how Aloha Authentic became present there, and just the opportunity that the station gave me with the freedom of building the show how I wanted to build the show. It gave me more of a boundary of how to build a show to keep it more professional, not to be so um, a boring interview. How to create just a simple conversation into something that people would want to be interested in tuning into and not tuning away to. So I've learned a lot from the station, and I've been so blessed. And everything was all timing, and that's why for me, the only thing I can think of is it's such a God thing. Like
Mm.
everything worked in the same way with all the stress that it would have worked without the stress, because I mean, every step of the way is what got me here. And if anything was different, I probably wouldn't be here today. So that's how I got into it. And now that I'm out of it, I honestly have no idea what's next. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where Aloha Authentic is going to go, with that being my priority. But I've gained other things along the way too. I started my Now and Then tours, which are historical walking tours in Waikiki. And for me, it's just another expression of storytelling. Um, Gosh, it's like a 10-minute answer to your one question, but
No,
that's how
that's
my
good.
brain works. You know, you
Yeah.
just elaborating more of who I am. That's why I feel like, gosh, I have, this is kuleana. I don't know what it is. I don't know what my role is in society today. I know where I have influence, and I'm so blessed to be able to have had that opportunity to be an influence so far. Um, but it really is like, for me, the way of believing that God is real for me is because I'm in this space that everybody recognizes is good kuleana to uphold. Um, yeah,
Oh, it's beautiful.
sorry.
Thank
You
you.
have to
No,
stop me
that's
because I can
good.
keep going on and on.
No,
That's the
no,
whole
it's
pointy part of it.
you're fine.
That's how you can fill up an audience and moments of silence. You know,
Yeah. No,
if you
no,
have
it's
these things in the
fantastic.
back pocket that you can just talk to,
Yeah.
that's one way for me that I'm slowly breaking the being shy and awkward and
Mm.
socializing, going back to that part, being the introverted person. These are the little things that I've learned to kind of break through and try to be a little bit more open as a person, is having little tidbits that you can just kind of like throw into the conversation, but then you start to get caught off guard and you just keep going on and on and on. So
It's okay. That's okay. In fact, one of my questions was what makes you a great storyteller? And I think that's
um,
it. Being able to,
there
um,
you go, that's one.
that's great. Yeah. Being able to, fill that void in conversation and keep things lively and entertaining, I look forward to what you do and how you present yourself and our history. So I really want to mahalo you for that. Who inspires you?
My tutu is one of my biggest inspirations growing up. And I think because just being raised by her, and hearing her stories and things, seeing how she done things, it was I was very, very fortunate to have that influence. Of course, my parents is the biggest influences also, and just the inspiration of faith for me, of being okay with really not knowing. That's a big inspiration for me. And like, I don't know if that makes sense, but there's a lot of things I would always question myself, like what, and I look at all these people. There's so many people in our community that are huge influences, and much more than I could be able to think off on the top of my head right now. Um, but with all of the many different people, going into these spaces with these very respected kupuna in our community, especially as a little kid, um, I know what it felt like to be kind of uncomfortable in that space,
Mm.
because I felt like maybe I don't know. I don't speak Olelo at that time. Now I still don't. I'm not fluent in Olelo. I can keep a conversation, and I'm much better listening than speaking it out loud myself. But I know what the feeling is when you go into a space and I don't know what the best word is, feel unworthy, or
Mm.
some things you don't understand what's being said. That within itself, as much as the person who's sharing and that I'm there listening to, is a huge inspiration. Walking away and having that feeling of not knowing,
Mm.
and that feeling of like I'm the outsider, was an inspiration myself, because and I've, over my journey in my faith, I've come to realize, having that feeling of being the outsider and that negative feeling on the inside, we shouldn't be having that. So
Mm.
how do I not have that? Is I want to go and find out what the answer is. So you have to push through all of that kind of negative feeling. So life journey for me, while at the same time I'm learning my cultural side. So again, it's one and the same. And going back to Kahu Ken, that was one of the things he said, when I asked him the question, "Is there a difference between culture and faith?" It's one and the same. I'm like,
Mm.
the way he said it, it just triggered in my mind. Um, so in terms of inspiration, I like to think now everything really is an inspiration. I mean, I go into the forest times and just listen. I imagine in my head what could have been, I daydream a lot. That's why I'm super, sometimes I feel like I'm such a ditz because I'm kind of just like, oh, I'm sorry, wait, what? Because it's just, and I don't know if ditz is a bad word, sorry. But I'm so bubbly in my head is because I just daydream a lot of times.
Mm,
And it's because, reading all this culture and this history, having this faith in reading the Bible and just trying to make it relevant for me, I have to play it in my head so I can kind of be part of it and I can build more of a relatability with it. That becomes an inspiration.
mm,
And thinking of my kupuna, like either the kupuna that I know and I have relationships with, or kupuna that I read about, I'm inspired, and I think using our monarchy, some figures that are commonly known more so in our community than others, figures that other people can relate with. It's and figures that have a lot of information documented about them.
mm,
They're inspirations for me, and that's why I have, and kind of sidebarring. This is me just putting in my mind now, even in the sense of in the Bible, you're not putting anybody else and honoring somebody higher than God. For me, I look at these kupuna and even our deities. For me, Pele and Kanaloa and I have so high respect and I put them in such a high regard as well. But for me, I find that balance with faith and um, just that challenge of where that balance is for myself is
mm,
inspirational because I want to not have the negative feelings on the inside. I want to have peace with it. So for me, I want to just find a way of, again, going back to what is it for my journey. And if I can share my journey with anybody else, they're not going to probably understand a lot of it because it's me, but there may be bits and pieces in my story that connect with each individual differently. And if that leads them to understand their culture more, if that leads them to find more answers to their questions on their own, if that finds them to find out who God is for them, that's inspirational to me because that
mm,
I know that I'm not living my life just spinning wheels in the sand because growing up, I was mental health wise, I would be so depressed. I realize now I was so depressed and I get back into the spaces of depression and I hate the world and I cry myself to sleep. And for what, and you go through these pains of now understanding that's all, what I was going through. And I understand what I go through now. When I get into that space in my just personal journey in life of being angry, being hateful,
mm.
no, like turn that off and I step
Exactly.
away and I go someplace else. I'm not here to hate my life anymore. And now that I see as a little kid, just in my own mind, that the mind is the battlefield and
Mm,
it's all about the thoughts. So one thing to me, for me in my journey, Aloha Authentic, studying and just reading about my history and my kupuna, my mo'oku, of how it's healing for my mind
mm,
and finding my journey and being able to express it and share it with others. When it's received and I get accolades for it, it's just very humbling. So it's a humbling experience too. Um, yeah, sorry. I have a really
no,
big problem of just going off.
no, it's
So that's why I'd say
good.
it's really, it's a big difference sitting on this side of the camera.
Yeah, yeah, Kalamai, you're doing great.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
so something you said about marketing, kind of help in a way because I battle mental health too. I think this is a really good conversation to have as Kane, that and within our communities that studying Mo'olelo Hawaii, the Hawaiian history and learning about heroes, right? I mean, growing up, we grew up with Chuck Norris and uh, John Wayne and Spider-Man and all these
Norris didn't
heroes.
pass away, Chuck Norris.
Exactly, exactly. Um, but yeah, even for me, like, what one thing, you're talking about branding, right? So if you look at the behind me, I'll go to this way, right? You see the Hawaiian Kingdom podcast and
Mhm.
you see the royal seal and the red curtains. That was because I learned about Mo'i Kalakaua and his journey to Japan and how he left this curtain with the royal seal for the Kabuki Theater on his journey around the world.
Oh,
And
really?
I thought to myself, wow, that makes me proud to be Hawaiian. Here we are before any king, before any president. Here's Mo'i Kalakaua, and marketing himself, right? He's saying, hey, this is my sovereign country. And think, as soon as they had it in the Kabuki Theater, any dignitary that came to Japan would learn about, this independent sovereign country, the first in the world, non-Aboriginal, non-European
Mhm.
country in 1843 that was able to, become a part of the family of nations and just reminding people, hey, we're still here, and um, and I think that might have even inspired him personally. I feel like through my research to bring back the hula after he came back from the tour because he saw the people in Japan practicing their cultural dances and still maintaining a sense of independence, right, as a non-European country. And later, the Hawaiian Kingdom actually recognizes Japan's independence, which is also cool. I didn't know that, right? I didn't know we were the first country to recognize Japan. All we learned about is Pearl Harbor. So I
Mhm.
didn't know, the awards that Mo'i Wahine Liliuokalani got from Japan in 1892 on this, you got this red velvet pillow from Japan. She gets this, I think it was called the Royal Order of the Chrysanthemum. It was one of the highest orders they got. And just learning about, our relation in the world. And for me, that's been a huge help to build confidence and connect with others. But um, back to you. What interview do you feel changed you the most?
A really good question. I can't think one over another because every kupuna, and that's why I love this
Mm,
job, this position, this kuleana, is because I'm a front row seat student to each of these
mm,
professionals in their own right. And I get the up close personal engagement to learn with them. And every single one I inspires me. Off the top of my head, though, just right now popping in my mind is Uncle Earl Kama'a.
mm,
Because Uncle Earl, if going back to the whole culture faith balance, um, he's one person who I have high respect with his what he says because from the little that I know of him, and I was very fortunate to have three different episodes with him, um, to really pick his brain on Ho'oponopono, but
mm.
himself as a native Hawaiian who grew up in Halava on Molokai, a rural place that one of the most rural in the world that you can get,
Yeah.
and being raised by his mama and in the old style that we don't have very many people today who come from that era
Mm,
anymore, with their knowledge not being learned in a school, but their knowledge being passed down from them, from their kupuna and their makua and in their family, and being raised with that knowledge. There's not many of us, myself
right.
included, who can say that we can speak from these lived knowledge experiences. I'm not saying that they're not. I would like just to think that when we're talking about our kupuna in this space that Uncle Earl comes from, there's not many of them. So having that opportunity to hear his Ike, and then coming from a space who uh, is a he studied Judaism, and
Mm,
I don't know if he's a Christian in his own right in some space today. Um, but it's like, oh, Uncle, how do you? I mean, your mama was a kahu and a priest, and she did all these things, and then now you're,
mm,
how do you find a balance between the two? Because you're it's such a success story in my mind and so inspirational in your knowledge from the cultural side and yeah, it's just such a huge inspiration. So that alone, I learned so much about balance from myself, from him. But there was one question in particular, his answer was just a life lesson for me. The
mm.
question to him was, Uncle, being from where you are, Halava Molokai, Kupuna, is it Molokai or is it Molokai? And he's like, you
Hey,
know,
let's settle it.
yeah. So he's like, this is the highest level of thinking.
Mm,
It's not an issue. So stop making an issue. because the most important thing is the mo'olelo, not the fact that you're right or wrong. So if you know the mo'olelo behind the story, then why is it an issue? And I
Mm.
just get chicken skin now thinking like, Uncle, you just, that's like a mic drop, crack the rock. It's done. Like,
Right,
it,
right,
it-
right, right.
and to me, that answer can be applied to maybe not every, I don't know, can
Mm.
be applied to multiple things in your life outside of culture, outside of being Hawaiian. That is a life lesson to me that we all can learn from, because why do we always need to be right? And I think a lot of issues that
Mm.
we have today, especially in the political realm and social media realm, somebody always has to be right. But why? It's such more of a humbling experience, and you learn much more when you can relinquish that elevation, I guess, because it's not about that. If you learn and you get what is supposed to be gotten from whatever it is, and you malama that, and you benefit from that, you share that. That's what it's about. And that one little answer to me was that, "Brad, that was golden. Thank you very much."
Amazing. Yeah. It, it's interesting, I think and it was funny too, because before this podcast, I had this impression that I should kind of remind the audience, that and just the people in general right now, it's just so divisive. It's right or wrong, right? And everybody has an opinion and perspectives. Um, but truth is often in the middle, right? So even with early Christianity, with our people, um, you know, I don't know another set of Christians in the world with Amakua, when you see the gecko and you see the mano and you're like, oh, you feel protected. And you see the pueo flying on your way to church too, like
Mhm.
what people embrace their culture and live in this balance of duality. And I think the old Hawaiian religion really was this balance, right? Kind of more yin yang, and getting back to that balance. I feel the reason why I made this podcast was to bring balance to the conversation, because we all grew up. I mean, I went Hilo High, elementary school days, high school days. I even got my MBA at HPU. So I got my master's degree. And this whole time I'm learning all these things. And I never learned about this place, right?
Mhm.
So for me, the interview that you did that really inspired me was with the foremost expert on this subject, because I'm like, wow, I didn't know, and you
Mhm.
don't know what you don't know, but it's hard to have balance without the other piece, right? And we've been kind of trained with this narrative of, Hawaii's a state, we're the 50th star. Um,
Mhm.
what about this royal curtain, right? You know what I'm saying? So the interview with Dr. David Kianusai, um, just because the show focuses on the Hawaiian Kingdom, I'd kind of want to ask you a
Mhm.
little bit more about that and bring some light to his research. I think most people, and I've already done 4 other episodes prior to this with people that were either his personal friend or doctorates, like Lawrence Guncher, who teaches in Fiji, um, who took his class. I've taken his class to Umi Perkins, who's taught at Kamehameha schools for like 34, 35 years.
Mhm.
Um, and then Donovan Preza, who, teach at Kapiolani Community College on the Great Mahele. And they're all kind of looking to this one guy that you were able to sit down and have an interview with. Um, and I know some of the questions, and some of the answers, right, might have been, oh, okay, I never know.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So I'd like to talk a little bit about that interview with Dr. Sai and what makes you want to have that conversation.
It was another component to having a difficult conversation with the umeke that's open. And I always start off every Aloha Authentic episode acknowledging that the bowl of poi is open on the table. because growing up, Tutu would always say, when the bowl of poi is open on the kitchen table, no negativity is spoken because that negative energy is going to spoil the food and you don't want to eat spoiled food. So positive conversations only. That's the symbolic gesture that I was speaking of earlier when I mentioned this umeke, because before it really was a bowl of poi that we would eat. But then
Mm.
as we continue these conversations, and me, because I'm such a bubbly person in my mind, I'm all over the place, as you can tell, my conversations, which I'm getting better at connecting the points. That's the biggest thing for a storyteller is you have to
Mm.
connect the points. So
Maikai.
then your Portuguese can at least make sense. And that's my challenge, is trying to make it all make sense. But with Dr. Kianusai, it was a conversation that I wanted to have because a lot of us Hawaiians aren't on the same page.
Mm.
And what's the point of us trying to move forward as a lahui if we have all these different chefs in the kitchen that have their own ingredients that want to cook whatever they want to do? Um, and they're, just the fact to being a Hawaiian on the news, to be able to bring these conversations on TV was one of the biggest. I'm very proud that I was able to bring it to a TV channel in front of the entire state, let alone the entire world when you put it on the internet. So it was elevating these conversations at the same time. But the whole point was, let's talk about what is actual. We have a
Mm.
lot of people who talk and talk and talk, but I want to know what the truth is, because I'm to a point where I don't even like to go onto social media. You don't even know what video is real anymore, let alone being AI, and you don't know what story is true. And when people say stuff, people can say anything. And I don't want to be somebody who's going to be telling stories that I have no idea what the actual truth is, because first and foremost, I want to know what the truth is. I'm tired of arguing. I'm tired of hearing other people argue because I don't like this negative feeling. Life is supposed to be happy. And I
Mm.
understand that us as a people are in a space that we are fighting and have been fighting. And it's a hard space. And we see, even I come from a standpoint that I know that there may be Hawaiians who may not agree with me, or other people who may not agree with me. But I try to come into this conversation or come into this space with my brand as being someone who is trying to find the middle ground, who understands the pain and I have my anger. Gosh, you want to talk about having anger issues? Try not to find me on YouTube. I hope I'm not on YouTube, but I have anger issues of myself too, and I just don't express that. Social media wise, I'm kind of going off topic in a sense, but social media is so overwhelmed with negativity that when we had the death of George Floyd, I just, for some reason, on my social media feeds was hate, hate, hate,
Oh, yeah.
hate, hate, anger, which I'm not negating because that was horrible. But this is what I'm receiving. And then I become this angry person and I want to try
Mm.
to do things and I want to change the world and I want to change my own people. I want to change, justice for this. But what can I do? And then I get so angry, just not knowing what to do with all this anger.
Mm.
Part of my life journey was figure out what I can do and focus on that. So getting back to Dr. Kianusai is, well, social media wise, I stopped everything. I deleted everybody off my page. I blanked out everybody, and I only started to refollow positive stuff because
Mm.
I want to dedicate my life to being happy, not being angry. So that being said, um, I'm not the best person to kind of be the activist because
Mm.
I know that there are other people who are much more knowledgeable than me. First of all, I'm very superficial. I think I'm 101 for a lot of things. But if you want to talk expert, I don't feel I'm an expert in anything, but I can go with the flow with many different things.
Right.
So activists may not necessarily agree with me on this, but I just want to be part of the solution where we can move forward, hold our history, elevate our people, get to the point where we can be self-sustainable and do all what we want to do as a people for those who are standing in that standpoint. But for me also is, why don't we just find balance moving forward?
Mm.
This is history. It is our past. It is my inspiration. And I want to do my kuleana to uphold this and make sure that my kūpuna will always be pleased with my actions.
Right.
Trying to find the balance of that in today's world is not easy at all. And I can easily get discouraged. That's why on my social media, since I'm just finished off that point, I block all the negativity. You want to throw negative, and this is my space. I'm keeping positive and I'm keeping my head down, focusing on my own koleana, and I'll contribute that way. I don't want to be really involved in too many places because I don't want to. I'm happy being at peace, or I'm happy striving to get my peace for myself. Part of my life lesson, but that's my culture is part of that for me. Um, so then talking about the Hawaiian Kingdom with Dr. Keanu Sai it opened me up to a lot of the sources. Where can I get to him being a credible source himself? Is getting answers from him really helped to fill some of the questions that I had for myself. Um, for example, the flag, kalamai,
No, it's okay.
because I bought these after the conversation I had with him, because now that I have my now and then tours, I try to find ways that I can share what I learned with other people in different ways, and was understanding one, the flag, because I went into this conversation knowing I'm going to ask him this question. That red,
Right.
yellow, green flag that is being raised and represented by many Hawaiians, I have been told that that's the original flag of Native Hawaiians in the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Right.
Is that true? And where does this flag come from? And he's like, there's no historical evidence on that flag at all. And he's like, I know who created the flag, and he shared his story, and I don't know who that person is, and I've heard his name. But the fact that people say that's the ancient Hawaiian flag, you're already doing a disservice to our own lahui. If my question is, where's the source for that?
Right.
I always, as a practitioner, um, I tell this to other people when I'm on tour buses and I'm talking to tourists. I tell them, first of all, did you know that anybody can come to Hawaii and create a tour company? They don't even need to speak English. And there's no certification process, there's no vetting process, there's no license. They can start telling our story on our behalf to others. That makes me angry, because I have been to a space, I've been at Keiva Hale, and this is one of the things that pushed me to do this. I was taking Lomi Lomi classes from Kapono Souza at one point, and we would go up to Keiva Hale to go and learn in that space, not in the Hale, just in the park. And I would go up there by myself in my own time, just to kind of, be in the space. One time I had this, I see this tour, white van come in. This tour guy came out, Japanese guy, with a whole van full of Japanese tourists, and takes them in the heiau, and they're walking around in the heiau. They're putting their ukana on the pohaku. They're standing on the pohaku, and I'm sitting in the back on the bench in a distance, and I'm like, what? So I called my kuman. I'm okay, wait. I'm double, triple thinking myself now, because we don't do this, right? Do you do this? And he's like, no, we don't do this. So they're okay, because this is going on right now, and I just wanted to make sure. And I didn't approach him, but it just made me angry. Like, what's going on?
Oh yeah.
They had a puka in the heiau, but there was no rope, nothing to block them off. It's public, so they can go right into it in the state park or city park.
Yeah.
So a couple days later, I went back up there, and I was in the same space, sitting on the picnic tables, and the same van comes in, same Japanese tour guide comes in, another group of Japanese people go and do the same thing in the heiau, placing things, standing. So I approach the tour guide, and he's standing outside the heiau, and he's just watching them. So I approach him, and I'm like, excuse me, um, what what are you sharing with them? Because you're speaking all Japanese, and I don't know Japanese. What are you telling them? And all he said to me with a very thick Japanese accent was just, "Ugh, special place, special place." And that was it. And from there, I was just like, oh, okay, thank you, thank you. And I walked away. I didn't confront him any further. And to me, it was just like, oh, that is not right at all. So from there, I went down to the city office, to the parks office, and I now understand there's city and city and state park. So I don't know. I went to the Frank Fosse building, and I went to their parks office, and I went to the desk, and I approached the lady. I was like, "Excuse me, I just wanted to talk to somebody, because I wanted to talk to who takes care of Kei Vaheo out at Aia Loop Trail Park." And the first response to me from her was, "What is a heiau?" And I'm like, "Okay, wait, what?
Oh, whoa, whoa,
I
whoa.
don't understand what is going on here because this is obviously not right." And on
Yeah,
the inside, I'm super angry. But
right.
I know if I express that anger, if I express my anger to the
Mm.
Japanese guy, I would have
Oh,
done nothing. I
right.
wouldn't even be able to understand him. He wouldn't be able to understand me. So there was no point if I would have lost my cool with them and try to
Mm.
kick everybody out. You're making a scene. For me, I would be making a scene. I would be looking like a fool in their mind, and people around, even though that I know that I'm right, I'm trying to do the right thing for
Yeah,
my culture. I don't feel by doing that would have been the right way to do it. I go talk to the lady at the desk. I was pissed. Like,
yeah,
excuse me, you're
right.
taking care of my kupuna and you don't know what you're taking care of. I mean, I wasn't venting at her, but that's what I was feeling on the inside. So all I did was left a note. Can they call me back? Nobody ever called me back. But
Right.
I left that place and I'm like, oh, and there's anger.
Sure.
But if I express that anger in an unbalanced way, I'm not going to be doing any good. I'm only going to make the situation worse. I'm going to look bad. And so, life lesson. This is all life lessons for me. But anyway, I also like, okay, well, if nobody else is doing something, I want to do something. And that do something is educate. So
Mm.
going back to Dr. Keanu Sai, the one thing I really wanted to ask him was this flag because I really don't know. So he
Right,
said,
right.
no, it's made, it's a made up flag and it's representing, I, I honestly, to my knowledge, it's a Kanaka Maoli flag that represents modern Hawaiians. I honestly don't know. I'm still very ignorant to what that flag really represents. Now knowing that it's not an ancient flag,
Mm.
then what is our ancient flag and where does our flag come from?
Mm.
Because I don't even know the story of our flag, and I don't even know why our flag has a Union Jack inside of it. So Dr. Kianusai started to get into all of this. So he started to explain. So I went to go purchase these flags because I wanted to have it as a representation for myself. But
My
then when
God.
I do my tours,
Mhm.
if it comes upon in the conversation, I have these to show to give a visual representation because when I feel as a storyteller, my thing is how do you make the story relevant to the listener? Because if
Mm.
they don't relate, they're not going to retain, they're going to forget. And what's the point of you spending your energy on somebody who's not going to remember the
Mm.
moment that they walk away? So I do all these to build those bridges. So he said the first flag was this
Mm.
flag, and it's the red ensign. He said it was a red flag with the Union Jack and the canton. So I learned that the
Mm.
canton is this space on the corner of the flag. And he said this was given to Kamehameha because in 1794, if I'm not mistaken, Kamehameha became a British subject and Kingdom of Hawaii became a protectorate of the British Empire. And that was the first time I have ever heard that. And I get chicken skin now
Me
because it's like,
too.
wait,
Oh, for my listeners, just real quick, because I'm part
yes.
Scottish, so it's really easy to see my chicken skin because I get hairy
Uh,
arms. It's true.
for mine, I'm pretty sure you
Mine
can see
too.
from a
Mine too.
distance
I was
too.
like, oh,
But I
yeah,
never heard that before. So
same.
then he started going on, and already I'm intrigued because I know Kamehameha. I want to know more
Right.
about this. And so he said, no, this was given to him because, um, and I don't know off the top of my head, but it had to do with them having protection out in the ocean when he's traveling and a flag for the ship. And so all of that, it just led him to go, it's like, if this was the first sign. So I went to go do research. And apparently, this is called the Red Ensign, where a lot of the British mercenaries would fly. And um, he said, then the second time, more than reading, I've come to realize it was about almost 2 decades or so, but the Union Jack then became a flag that was flown by Kamehameha himself, even at his Kamakahonu residence, and a lot of other chiefs as well, until we got into 1816. And then he said at one period of time, though, we also had a flag that was similar to, oh, you can't see it. Oh, it's backwards too. Um, the East India Company, where
Right.
you had
Yep.
the Union Jack and the Canton on these stripes, which
Mm.
I'm still trying to figure out what is East India Company because it seems like it's not a country, but it was other countries who invested in this company, who then the company itself started to take over so many parts of the world,
Mm.
which it's a learning process for me. This is I'm the student having the first class lesson. So we were flying this at a time, and then in 1816 we got the first unique Hawaiian flag or the first flag to Hawaii that was unique to us. And this was in 1816. And because I do research through street names, I've come to find more stories to elaborate on this. In Chinatown, there's an Adams Street or an Adams Lane. And Adams is named after Captain Alexander Adams, who came here, and he was commissioned by Kamehameha along with Kamehameha himself and another person. I forget who off the top of my head. But they worked together to come up with this flag because Kamehameha was sending a ship to China to sell some amount of sandalwood. So he wanted to have his own unique flag before they went. So through Captain Alexander Adams, they came up with this flag, and they had 9 stripes on it compared to the 8 stripes that we have now. And the order was different. So on this flag, the bottom stripe is blue. Gosh, sorry.
The blue one.
Anyway. And then if we look at the flag we have today, my cute little one,
okay.
this is our current flag. And this
Yes.
flag, I color mine because I can't remember
No,
off
it's
the
okay.
top of my head if it's 1843 or 1845, but it was King
45.
Kamehameha 45.
Yep.
So it was King Kamehameha the Third after the whole Paulette affair in Thomas
Yep.
Square and everything. He wanted to, if I'm not mistaken, strengthen his military. So he wanted to revamp the flag, and he reordered after dropping 1 stripe to 8, 1 reflecting every island. He reordered the colors, and the state flag that we have today is the flag that King Kamehameha III adopted. And a couple of years ago, if not a year ago, some politician proposed a bill to change our state flag because it had to do with painful history of the British occupation. And I'm like, hey, wait, what? So all of this to me was it's making me angry on the inside because I think just the fact that I'm learning all the factual history, at least where I can get sources, and then hearing other people's mana'o and what they say, I get confused on knowing what is right and what is not. And I want to know the truth. I want to be able to share the truth. So learning all of this was such a, okay, now I know. But you still have those Hawaiians who will rep the red, yellow, green flag, and so be it. I have nothing against it. I just don't understand it. And I just feel, why are we trying to change our state flag if we know the history of our flag? We would understand it's not about the occupation. It's about our overcoming of the occupation. It's about everything that has come before. To me, that makes me a proud Hawaiian. Learning the history of these spaces, especially Waikiki, which I couldn't stand Waikiki, but the history of Waikiki and what I've been able to find pictures and seeing what it used to be, that's what I fell in love with. All of this is what I've been falling in love with. So why I really like this episode with Dr. Kealusai was because it was such an eye-opener to see how to learn for ourselves. We can hear and we can take what we hear from other people. We can see what we see in social media. We take that as facts. But how many of us actually take the effort to go and see if it's true, to go do the homework ourselves, to go and read it for ourselves? I don't know. And for me, I just feel like I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person who knows the truth. And that has been an inspiration. So going back to like, who's your inspiration? Dr. Keanu Sai is an inspiration because there's so many things that he filled in for me in terms of pukas that I had. I have so much more. I want to know what the other answers are. And while I'm doing it, why not share it with everybody else? Because if I'm learning and I don't know, somebody else must not know either. And just that curiosity and coming across inspirations like Maya Angelou, and she says, when you learn, teach, when you get, give. That's bloody brilliant, because then it's not living about ourselves. It's this la hui, it's this ahupua'a, it's this community living on an island that we should all be finding ways to work with one another to be able to survive rather than finding ways to break us apart. So for me, Hawaiian Christianity, it works for me. Being mahu and understanding my space in the world today and the roles and allowing that to become a moot point for me now compared to where it used to be. Culture is becoming, for me, it's a healing process. My faith in God is a healing process. So to be able to influence others with that, for me to be on here, I mean, I'm very, very, very appreciative of even be given the chance to talk story, So one episode like Dr. Keonusai's episode is much more than just an episode. It's a, I don't know, that's the excitement for me. There's value in it, and if people cannot accept value, then it wasn't your time to watch it. If you cannot hear this ike and accept the facts, and or if it doesn't work with you, if it doesn't connect with you, then it wasn't meant to connect with you at this time. Maybe one day it will. And that's how I approach it. So again, there may be people who disagree with me, but that's totally cool. For me, I'm just about learning, teaching, so other people can learn as well. Because no matter what our issues are,
Right.
I don't know the answer, but the first step to getting to that answer, no matter where your position is, has to be education. So
Right.
for me, put aside all the arguments and grumbling. That's not what it's about. Let's
Right.
let's have a
Right. Right.
conversation and talk story.
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
long
No,
answer.
no, no. That was
But
a
yeah, so here you
beautiful
go. These
answer.
flags.
Actually, could you have save the one with the blue stripe at the bottom?
Oh yes.
I'm just gonna kind of talk about that just a little bit. Um, because it's all about ho'oponopono, right? Like we need to just, like you said, sit down with the umeke and ho'oponopono, right? So
Mhm.
why do we think this flag, not this flag, right? And from what I understand from your interview is, and I know his name and who made the yellow and the red and the green. I'm not going to mention any names, but um, there was an article in the newspaper that said that basically he believed that the flag that was burned by Lord Paulet in 1842. So if Hawaiians are kind of confused, or maybe this is the first time hearing about this is actually a perfect time to talk about it because what's coming up at the end of the month. So I'll just kind of um, ask for the floor a little bit and kind of fill people in.
Oh yeah.
So what happened is there was a land dispute from a British admiral, and his name was Lord Paulet. And it wasn't the first time he had land disputes with our government, but he said basically he was owed land and given land, and that belonged to someone else. So he felt that the British subjects in the Hawaiian Kingdom were being treated unfairly, right? And he threatens to overthrow Kauikeoli, the Kamehameha Ekolu, Kamehameha III, and uses gunboat diplomacy, right? And basically gives him a letter and threatens him and says, "Hey, if you don't come down from your throne, I'm going to level everything," right? So kind of 1893 and what happened with Mo'i Wahine, Liliuokalani. So he, is overthrown or occupied by Great Britain, right? So during that time, he sends an envoy, right, of Timoteo Ha'alilio, William Richards, who worked for Timoteo Ha'alilio as a translator, and then later, I believe it was William Richards who basically did an envoy to, and they all kind of meet up in London and Paris, and that's where Timoteo Ha'alilio actually designs the royal seal, right? He
Oh
sketches it
really?
out as an artist. Yeah, I thought you would like to know that. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll send you the
interesting.
original one or maybe a link to this podcast of his original sketch. So he's actually in the Herald of Arms and he sketches it. Um, and he's able to get Great Britain. I mean, it was such an important mission to get our government back and end the occupation that there was a letter actually sent by Kamehameha III to Timoteo Ha'alilio. And I believe he goes through Mexico on a donkey, right? So he's got this mission and he's told like if this mission costs your life, you kind of have to be willing to give it. And he was. So, like when we think of all the Hawaiians that have served in the US military, they kind of have that kuleana, that responsibility that this mission is so important. So he had that command by our king to go forth and to restore our ea. So there's actually a newspaper that talks about I think it was like a day of or day after Paulette forces him off of the throne, that he promises the people that um, Ka'aina I kapono, right? Ka'ea I ka'aina I kapono. He says something to that effect, which is very similar to what he says later when Hawaii gets its independence in 1843 and Timoteo Ha'alilio is successful. And Admiral Thomas leaves, I believe, Mazatlan, Mexico, to set George Paulet straight because he wasn't the head admiral anyway, so he shouldn't have been toppling governments in the first place. So admiral, that's why Thomas Square, yeah. So like,
Mhm.
so but anyways, during this 5 month occupation, what they did was they actually took the High Hawaii, Lord Paulet, and he started, they were cutting up the high, they were burning the High Hawaii, and they were destroying our high. But if you could hold the one up with
Mhm.
the last blue stripe, okay, that one with the 9 stripes, just so that the creator of the yellow, green, and red stripe kind of learns that's the flag, right? That was the actual
Mhm.
one our kupuna would have saw burn for those 5 months. And how kaumaha, how sad it would have been to see their high, right, in 1816 that they had from
Mhm.
1816 to 1842 be destroyed, right, by a foreign occupation. So that would have been the one being destroyed. Um,
I
but
personally love this flag the best. I would
I
take our state flag and make that the flag.
I love them all, but the cool thing about that is the creator of the green, yellow, and red flag heard on Mo'olelo that that was the flag being destroyed, right? And it's kind of like telephone. I mean, we
Mhm.
again, we didn't even have our national language for 91 years. We had the language ban. Hawaiian history wasn't something that was really taught in high school. I know that. Wasn't taught in college. I know that, right? Elementary school, barely, right? So we're
Mhm.
learning this as adults, right? Me and you, and kind of
Mhm.
talking and these mo'olelos. But that would have, just to clarify, that was the creator of the red, green, and yellow flag. Plus, there was a movement out of Ethiopia. So it started in Ethiopia, um, where it's this kind of like what we see in Jamaica, right? Like the red, the yellow, the green.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm part Kanaka, so I'm also part Popolo, African American, Scottish. I mean, I'm a mutt, right? So I'm many things. So just to speak to the when you understand kind of like why Ethiopia made that flag to kind of liberate themselves, right? The green, I believe, was their fertile land. The gold represents, the yellow represented the gold in their soil in Africa, right?
Mhm.
Not too sure if Hawaii has gold in our soil, right? Maybe Tutu Pele spit up some when she was erupting a little bit. So maybe we get that. And then the red actually was the blood spilt to liberate Ethiopia and these African
Oh,
countries. And the
wow.
reason why I share this mo'olelo is because, it's nothing to be ashamed of our own history and our own, here we come from a country that was neutral, declares its neutrality twice, 1864 during the Crimea conflict, I believe during the Civil War as well. That and even, Mo'iwahine Liliuokalani kind of uses, I believe she uses the example what Kauikeaole does by standing down peacefully and using lawfare, right, to fight our battle rather than because it's not like Kauikeaole didn't have Lua masters around him, and you know what I mean? Like if
Mhm.
Hawaiians are known for something, I think some of this anger stuff might be because we were warriors. You see Chief of War Jason Momoa, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
but maybe there's a time where we was a little bit more scrappy. You know what I mean? So anyway, so I just kind of want to like fill in that blank for our viewers that are kind of confused about the green, yellow, and red flag and why this flag is different. And then I think in my own research, and I could be wrong, um, the Anglo-Franco proclamation, I would have to edit all that, proclamation, is signed on November 28th by Anglo being British, Anglo-Saxon, and Franco being France, right?
Oh,
So
I didn't know that. Okay, I know that.
yeah, so it was kind of like Great Britain and France recognize their independence together. And I think why the Hawaiian legislature in 1845 decides to alter the flag with the blue stripe at the end is because they had to figure out a way to kind of mahalo the first three countries in the world to recognize our ea. Because remember, our main
Mm.
goal was to become an independent country and not in this age of empire, right? So I think we have, we're voyagers, right? We hear stories um, from people that came early, like John Young, talking, probably sharing about, hey, Great Britain and colonization, and you think our ancient Hawaiian religion is a lot based in Tahiti, right? With Paoa and Kukailimoku coming from Tahiti, and you look at how France colonized Tahiti. Our languages are similar, right? So if there was any French voyager that came, they probably tipped us off like, hey, there's some big countries with guns and stuff, and they're going to force you to be this thing. So I think we got tipped off early on to like, hey, let's defeat colonization, right? Let's use all of our strategy to defeat it. So some people have a problem with the Union Jack. I see the Union Jack as konane, right? Hawaiian checkers. Like we're just kind of positioning ourselves in the world so we can protect our people within our island, our culture, our language. Um, and that's just part of our mo'olelo, right? A lot of people see that and they see, you know, the 94% of the planet that was colonized by Great Britain.
Mhm.
Um, but for us it was different. Like you said, 1794, we were a protectorate. And Kamehameha asked to be a British subject, right? So it's really hard to say we're colonized when our founding father of our country is saying, "Hey, I'd like to be a British subject," right? But also, as people that are proud to be American, we have to realize, like, George Washington was also a British subject. And you know what I'm saying? Like, technically,
Mhm.
right? Like, he was a British subject. And then, they had the Indian Wars and stuff, and then he fights and then, gains independence in the United States, right? July 4th, 1776. But for us, it was November 28th, 1843. So our legislature 2 years later in 1845 gets together and wants to mahalo the first three countries, I believe is what happened, by redesigning the flag of 1816.
Mm.
Because if you look at it, okay, so we have the 8 islands, right? And and then also it kind of talked to flag coat, right? So that was the flag of 1816. Now, if you get the flag, the tiny one, the high
Mm. Yes.
that one is the one that they changed after 1843. Now, so you have Great Britain in the canton, right? They recognize their independence. Mahalo to them. If you look at the last three stripes, how do
Mm.
we mahalo the United States? Because actually, Timoteo Ha'alilio first gets verbal assurance that the United States will recognize Hawaii's independence. So they didn't do it by paper like Great Britain and France, but we have verbal recognition and actually Timoteo Ha'alilio, fun fact, was the first man of color that was a foreign diplomat to actually enter into Washington, D.C. So we're talking about heroes, right?
Really? Wow. Yeah.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So he's able to get this verbal recognition of the United States. So that's why we kept the horizontal flag stripes, right? So that's kind of the element of our mahalo to the United States for their verbal recognition of our ea. And then if you look
And
at
then
the
I'm
last,
guessing that's the France flag.
well, yeah, if you look at the last three stripes, how do you incorporate a flag that has horizontal stripes with a flag that has horizontal stripes? Because France has it goes, like the red.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
how you do that? Now, I looked this up and I could just be out of my mind, but I really like I'm trying to figure it out. Like, could be wrong. But if you take the French flag that's a horizontal flag and you want to hang it vertically, guess what the first color
Mm.
is?
Blue.
Polu. Yep. Polu, white, and then ula ula, red. Yeah.
Interesting. I
So
never thought of
so it
that.
goes polu. So if you look at the last three stripes, that's that, and you look at like if you had to do a canton on
Yeah.
you see the upper left canton, you see Union Jack, but
Yeah.
nobody's looking at the bottom corner of the opposite right lower canton, which goes blue, white, red. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then the flag code's really cool too, because if you're out in sea, the white stripe means you're in a state of peace, right? And Lono Kamaka Hiki is the god of peace. So actually, our old religion is in there, because Kamehameha Ekahi wasn't Christian, right? I mean, he just historically
Hmm.
he just wasn't.
Hmm.
Lono, Kukailimoku is the red stripe. So if you fly your flag upside down and say you're sending sandalwood, right, to China, now you're flagging to the other ships, hey, we're a nation in distress.
Interesting.
That's my
Never heard that.
theory. That's my theory. Yeah, I haven't wrote about it, I haven't read about it, but I think like why change it, right? After 1816 and
Hmm.
2 years after. So that's my and the long blue stripe is Kanaloa, the god of the deep ocean, and then the short blue stripe is Kane, the god of fresh water.
That's interesting. See, and that's why I love it because you're always learning.
Mhm.
You're never. One thing I learned from um, Uncle Pono Shim, who had since passed. I was very blessed to be able to spend some time with him, and he was well. I first um, learned of Pono Shim watching this a convention that was recorded on TV, and it was him and a previous kumu of mine, Manu Myers. So because I seen her, I stopped to watch. And
Mm.
them two were talking about Antipilahi Paki's expression of aloha. So Pono Shim was starting to talk about how he was taught what each of these represented. And for oh gosh, I got into this for a reason. Um, cut that part out. Gosh, see what I mean?
No, you're fine.
I had a
You're good.
seed and I was going like this and I forgot. But aside from that, one of the biggest things for me as a storyteller that I learned is that even though, and this is a humbling side for me, even though that things aren't written, I also understand a lot of the mo'olelo I know and a lot of mo'olelo out there are stories that are taught through orally. Voice is just told from one person to another. And
Mm.
you cannot negate stories that are told by you to you by your kupuna. So even though that there's nothing documented to show proof that this is where it is, you cannot negate that. So for me, and this is what I tell everybody as a storyteller and as just somebody who's interested in knowledge, don't ever look at something as when we get into this realm of what's right or wrong, like, oh, just because you have this story, all of these
Right,
stories
right, right.
historically is all wrong. You just, for me, I keep myself as an open book. So even though you learn one thing, you hear another story that may not necessarily match other stories or variations you hear. You just now know a wide range of variations to one story, which makes you even more knowledgeable.
Mm.
So that's why I love this conversation and I love talking with these kupuna and having more of this touchy subjects to talk about
Sure.
um, because it's a learning experience. And I think it's also, leaves the conversation for each guest hoping that your thoughts are starting to go, you're starting to think about things more. Maybe it inspires you to go and do more work on your own, to do your own research. And if that's the case, there's nothing bad with that. That's all good
Mm.
stuff. So that's why I also love to touch upon these kind of conversations. And thanks for sharing that because I didn't
Yeah.
know a lot of that, a lot about
Yeah,
that.
and the Union Jack, just so people know, combines the crosses of the three patron saints.
I had to do
So
research on that.
there's some, yeah, it's I believe it's the cross of Saint George, England, cross of Saint Andrew, I believe was Scotland, and then the cross of Saint Patrick, Ireland. So even the three, kind of represents. And Kawi Keoli, who designs the flag in 1845, right? Kamehameha the Third. Um, his birthday is kind of. I was taking a class with Ron Williams. It's kind of debated either was one day or the other, but he actually chose St. Patrick's Day to celebrate it, which is kind of
Mhm.
interesting. So
No,
Kamehameha the Third's birthday was actually celebrated on St. Patrick's Day.
but
Um,
actually born in August. Yeah.
yeah.
August, I think.
Interesting, yeah. But yeah, I feel the same way, right? The more we know, and for me, I don't know if this is true for you, but the more I learn and I find credible sources, the less nuha I become. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
True
incredible
story.
peace. It's incredible
It
peace, just, you know.
that's how I feel. And I don't look down upon, I don't negate, and
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
no bad feelings for. I have a lot of friends who are much more engaging in their
Sure.
stance than I am, and I 100% appreciate that. I just, as the older I get, I realized, well, I kind of was forced into it too, because I used to be one, especially during when Mauna Kea first started. I was out there, I was holding
Mm,
sign on the side of the road. I was wearing my malo, being
mhm,
ridiculed by people who want to say stupid stuff as they pass by me just for being in a malo. You know, I've had my fair share of that. And I also know the anger that I've held during all of that time.
mm,
And not negating that, because anger is a great fuel if you can engage it and
right.
utilize it well. Um, Me being into the news, I was forced, if I wanted to keep my job, to not take a stance. And it was
Mm,
so difficult at first, especially if Mauna Kea was still going on. And then I had the chance to go back up to Mauna Kea as the reporter. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I could, like I want to, and it was my idea, but also like, can I really do this on the inside where I know that I can be at peace with myself, let alone balanced in my stories, that
mm,
it's not going to be more on one side than the other. Because I definitely have my stances. I have my own stance in everything, but
yeah.
I don't express it out loud, publicly. But I learned that through the news, and at first it was so difficult, and I hated it.
Mm,
I felt like I was doing a disjustice to my people. Being in a space of influence, I have to be influential. So why am I not? But then I've come to realize over time that it's because of my stance of, at least publicly,
you're right, right,
being a
right.
neutral space. You are much more accepting by many more people, and if you can, uh, you're not tuning people out. The moment
Right.
I take a stance, the moment I say that I choose this or that publicly, then I'm gonna lose a lot of people. And it's not
Mhm,
me like, oh, I want to have friends. But if I know that I'm being influential, I want to be the greatest influence of positivity that I can.
right.
So it challenges me, and I think it's just a challenge for everybody. It's
Yeah.
a challenge to be able to take your anger and take what you feel is right and take truth and word it in a way that you can be progressive with it, that it
Mm,
will be beneficial to a conversation, not one that's going to turn people off and you don't even get into
mm,
a conversation that hasn't even started yet. And the process that I have learned to find what my right words are, I have gained much more respect from people. I feel, I would like to think, I could have a lot more relationships with friends than turning off a lot of people because I'm going to get angry for my stance against their
sure.
stance.
Yeah.
But you become a lot more trustworthy, I think,
Mm,
in a sense that you can engage with many people, and I feel like I'm still saying the same message, but my thing is, how do we just change it's your mindset. So I'm
yeah.
not over here trying to teach people. I'm
Sure,
here
sure.
just to try to set something that hopefully elaborates your mindset,
Right.
and ask questions, and
Mhm,
it's okay to ask questions.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's, again, going back, it's, for me, it's just a trip that my culture, my faith, my journey, it's all a life lesson for me. But
Mm,
if it's a life lesson that I get all these different things individually for myself, it can other people can take things away from it that impacts their life. So that's why I feel, on one whole aspect, culture is so important. You mean, there's so many levels, but culture is healing.
mm,
Culture, and if we lose our culture, we lose that sense of healing authentically to who we are and where we're from.
right.
That's
Right.
different than using something foreign, something external, to
Mhm,
heal us. Even in just the mindset of, I studied Aloha for a little bit.
mhm.
I came from the space of no Western medicine. I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm going to do
Oh, yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah.
I came from that space, and I understand that mentality. And I had kupuna who are la'au practitioners and lomi practitioners, and worked with the greats like Papa Awai and these kupuna who we only read about today. And they helped to bring balance to me of, Western medicine's not bad. They had all these things. There's one person, we tried all these different things, and
Mm,
nothing worked for a long period of time until he took a pill. The moment he took a pill, he was fine and he was happy. And trying to find a balance between my own self of wanting being connected with Āina 100% and be like our kupuna, and finding my space of where we are today in 2026, and that challenge of finding balance is hard.
Mm.
But my journey, I'm just so blessed that it has been healing for me to find that balance. So my journey and my stories don't relate with everybody, but
Yeah,
maybe there are pieces that it can relate. And yeah,
yeah.
probably an answer you didn't ask the question to.
No, it's perfect. We're here to find out more about you and I think
That's just how my brain works.
yeah, and just to kind of like um be a sounding board, some thoughts that came to me. Your show is called Aloha Authentic, right? And I think to be an authentic human being, right? You're gonna have moments where you're happy, you're gonna have moments when you're sad. You're gonna have moments where you're angry. You're gonna have moments when you're haole, you're happy. And it's okay. Those feelings are good, right? I mean, everybody is, that's part of our humanity, right? And I think these conversations help bring humanity back to being a Hawaiian, and that balance of, it's okay to be nuha. It's not okay to stay nuha, right?
Mhm.
Because what are you gonna do with this, right?
Yeah.
And how do we build as a lahui and come together? And I think one of the best ways is to be authentic with our history, with who we are, and accepting of others that are different than us, whether mahu, whether straight, Christian, atheist,
Hmm.
kukia'i mauna, whatever, what I'm saying? Like, but
Hmm.
to respect and malama each other. My tutu kane was also la'au and Lomi Lomi practitioner. And he worked at the spa owned by um, the Rockefellers, which was really
Hmm.
interesting. And some of them got things that Western medicine's still kind of trying to figure out today. And he would use La'al to heal. And he, I would argue, was born because of a kahuna that my great great grandparents were having miscarriages, and the kahuna gave them advice to go to Mauna Kea, right? And to do ceremony there. And then their miscarriages happened or stopped, and then they had my grandpa, right? So without Hawaiian culture, but they're very Mormon people. And if you know my cousin
Hmm.
Kalani Pe'a, like,
Oh yeah.
so, right, very, into his faith, also Mahu, right? But and I grew up kind of later I converted to the church, served a mission Brazil, and I still haven't heard songs as good as his for like Love at Home in Olelo,
Mm.
Hawaii. But here's this balance, right? Because he's Mahu and he's singing about love at home. How do we have balance? And our kūpuna taught, there's man's law and there's God's law. Yeah, and God's law is
Mhm.
always love, right? That's the aloha part of aloha authentic, right? So if you're confused out there, doesn't feel like love, doesn't feel like peace, probably not from Akua. That's my kind of compass that I
Mhm.
use. Like, am I on
Same.
the right?
Yeah.
But I can tell you, there was a halal that came out. There was an event, I want to say a month ago, because I live in Reno, Nevada right now. And I call it joint resolution land because this is where McKinley authorizes the senator from the
Really?
Reno, yeah, Nevada. His name was Francis Newlands. He lived above the courthouse in Reno. And even though the 38,000 kupuna, the five Pili ohana and the nine pe ohana, we come together and we say, no, we don't want annexation. They circumvent the Senate, and through the House of Representatives, they just passed the joint resolution to take the ea of our country. And this is the legal argument that Keanu is making, is kind of re-looking at our history instead with the lens and the hindsight of colonization, but using the international law frame of, hey, this actually kind of looks like occupation. Like it's kind of
Mhm.
like Poland, or Ukraine, right now.
Mhm.
Because the language ban could have been a national language ban. And, we look at historical documents, we're like, oh, everybody spoke Olelo Hawaii. Like 1893, only 5% of the population spoke
Really?
Olelo Haole or English. We're just learning this, right?
That's
So
crazy.
different perspectives,
Yeah.
and being able to understand just kind of what happened and why. But it's interesting because I think it's called the AANHPI, the Asian American Native
Mm.
Hawaiian Pacific
Yeah.
Islanders group. And it's funny because one of them actually two of them took my class because I took Keanu's class and I asked, can I use your slideshow to kind of like teach about this? Because I have to live in Reno, Nevada, Joint Resolution Land, and be Kanaka and have this. It's really hard to balance out here, I can tell you that. So
I could only assume.
but I've been able to guest lecture with Deborah Harry at the Indigenous Studies Department. And I think just last year, she actually won an award of being one of the best teachers in the United States.
So,
So and I taught four of her classes using Keanu slides, right? So, and all I'm doing is reading off the slides. It's
mhm.
just, like point by point. But before interviewing Dr. Keanu, were you familiar with any of these legal arguments surrounding the Hawaiian Kingdom?
I I'm familiar with some of them, at least hearing them, but I know very little of the in depth. And that could it's super intimidating because you have people who do, and they'll start rapping off, and I'm like, I
Oh
don't
yeah, yeah, yeah,
know. And for me, I graduated college with a political science degree, and I still don't understand political science. Like, it just made me
sure.
more understand how complicated it is. And I feel a lot of times it's made complicated
Mm,
because they want you to just give up along the way, in
sure.
the sense of, the grander picture. Um,
Right, right, right.
and so, no, not really. And that's part of the reason what I try to do is also take that kind of extreme knowledge and
Hmm.
kind of do it in simple terms, trying to bring it down and dumb it down in a sense. Because that's how I understand. I don't
Right.
understand the legality talk of stuff. So if we can just simple questions and kind of hopefully through that have a better idea. But over time, the more I'm starting to hear these things, the more I'm getting more ma'a with them, like the Anglo-Franco. I didn't know where the names came from.
Mm,
But those kind of things, like, oh my gosh. And then just doing research on that then leads me more to learn who Timoteo is. And
mhm.
then what all there was something else that I read about him. Um, because then now I'm starting to read other things, and then you learn other tidbits of people you learned about. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. Um, but anyway, yeah, so no, but um, I'm so fortunate that he spent time to talk story, because I think it is a very important conversation that we need to have. And we're in a space today that politics is not the easiest thing to talk about, to be
Mhm.
a progressive and a beneficial conversation. So to find ways that we can build knowledge in a safe space, in an unintimidating space, um, that's what's important for me for Aloha Authentic, is that we all, no matter what space we come from, the level of our knowledge, we can still understand and take something away,
Right.
and learn from that.
Yeah, and I hope the viewers have learned a lot today through our conversation here, and
I hope
and
they stayed on this. This has been sorry, and I don't know
yeah,
this.
it's all right.
This is
Yeah, no,
probably our
it goes
historically
on.
longest episode.
Ever, yeah. Mine tend to be long. But for those who have hung on, mahalo to you guys staying on with us and learning. I kind of want to end with a observation, if that's okay.
Mhm.
So, um, it's just because my third guest on this podcast was Dr. Umi Perkins. And I want to say about 3 months ago at Kamehameha Schools, he showed this video, it's 10 minutes, talks about, how Hawaii was a constitutional monarchy and really what happened in 1893. Um, without that treaty of annexation, because the Kuwait petitions were basically they were shelved, right? And they were in the National Archives for almost 99 years, right? Before Noinoi Silva rediscovers these names and what that meant, right? And the Lanakila behind that. Um, and I think part of I don't want to go off on a tangent, but just to kind of highlight July 31st, that's coming off. The reason why I'm Nuha, I think but also Hau'oli. There's two ways. Is the glass half empty, half full, right? Because we can think, oh man, we never know for 100 years. But now we get these formats where we can learn, right? That hey, La Hoʻihoʻi was a national holiday. Chief of War even they debuted on that day to kind of nod to this national holiday. And La Kuʻokoa being November 28th. Now I'm looking at it, it's like, oh yeah, I'm Kaumaha, I never know. But now I get 2 more days a year I can eat Hawaiian food and no be shaved
Hmm.
and throw ʻāina. So uh, back to the AA NHPI, they had a big um, convention, and I called them, and two of them took my class, and they ended up throwing it at the McKinley Art Center. And I was like, oh.
How ironic could that be?
How I was like, please no. And I felt bad because I did kind of get in my activism and I blew my poo because they had a halal they actually called in from California that might not have known the mo'olelo. And I said, no, a'ole pono. Our culture is not a commodity, right? It's not just ornamental, right? Like when Kalakaua brought back the hula, it was because he was seeing other countries strive for their space in the world. Um, and we kind of lo lose that context when we don't have our history, right? We don't really know. But when we gain a little bit of sense of our history, we kind of know our place. So, anyways, I was kind of mad at that, so I protested, and um, I don't think the halal was very happy about me. And I always apologize to them on every show. But it was just the kuleana I felt I had because there needs to be balance, right, to these voices. And sometimes you gotta be the voice that says no. I think it was it Desmond Tutu said that something to the effect that if an elephant steps on the tail of a mouse, that the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Right?
Mhm.
And if what Dr. Kianusai is saying is true, and we've been this occupied people for 133 years, maybe that's the real source, right? Of this all this called maha and this nuha. And how do we look at it for what it is? But anyways, back to Umi. So he shows this video and then he introduces Federico Lenzerini, who's one of the foremost experts on international law. And just looking at our mo'olelo Hawaii through that lens. And as someone who's an expert of international law, he sees occupation, right? So you have this man from Italy, right, seeing this.
Mhm.
You have even the UN ambassador, Alfred de Zayas, was trained in Harvard in international law and voted by the United States to be an independent expert at the United Nations. He looks at Hawaii's situation, non-Kanaka, non-judgmental, and he's seeing this. So why are these experts in this certain field seeing this? If that makes sense, and that kind of makes me curious and wanting to learn
Mhm.
more. Um, and that's kind of the reason behind the inspiration behind this podcast is let's learn about it because there's going to be maybe some, like you said, difficult conversations, right?
Mhm.
But not from anyone just off the street, right? People that have dedicated their lives in understanding Aupuni Hawaii or the Hawaiian Kingdom at a deep level, right? People like Dr. Keanu Sai. And anyway, so July 31st is coming up. Go celebrate, eat some poi,
Mhm.
right? Get your
Yeah.
umekes out.
Yeah. It is,
Um,
talking real fast on
yeah. Go
holidays. I
ahead.
just came across this the other day, a couple weeks ago. I was doing research on, I forget what led me to it, but I came across the first official observed holidays in recognized by Hawaii's legislature, which is in 1896. And they had the list of 7 observed holidays, and it was January 1st, New Year's Day, January 17th, downfall of the monarchy day. So
Wow.
3 years after the queen was illegally overthrown, they observed a holiday in the Republic of Hawaii, celebrating,
Celebrating her.
observing, and bringing attention
Wow.
to the downfall, and so much that there is a holiday observing that. But then following that, you had June 7th, Kamehameha Day, who was the gentleman who established the Hawaiian Kingdom. And then they had July 4th, which was um New Year's, or what did they call that? Introduction to the birth of the Republic of Hawaii Day, which was on July 4th. And it's just, to me, it's like, it does not make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Those 3 days next to each other, let alone a day that you're honoring the downfall of our monarchy. And you want to talk about anger? I can throw so much things about in defense and to go against
Sure.
that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
the biggest thing I think from that is just I it's an inspiration that
Mm,
people should know this, but we should also um I mean, when I did that post, people are like, "Oh, what's the point? It's done already. Move on, move on." I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
there is a point. I'm not the best. I'm not an expert. I sometimes I don't know what the answers are,
Sure.
but knowledge is power.
Right.
You tell me that it's not a hurtful thing to know that a monarchy was overthrown and then celebrated, and then she had to live through that. When I'm reading her book and I'm looking at her kupuna, that is inspiration
Mm,
because that is Heva. And my mentor always told me, don't you ever grumble about something if you have nothing to propose as a possible solution to what you're
mhm,
grumbling about. Because nobody wants to hear just somebody grumbling. That's not respectful. But if you
mhm,
can come out and throw some possibilities that you can together as a people work and give your effort to trying to be better and trying to move forward and become more peaceful, that's what people will listen to. So, coming from my perspective, I would just like to say that I know not everybody's going to agree with me, and I'm totally cool with that. Um, because it's not about me trying to really educate, it's about finding the sources where you can educate yourself just by
mm.
doing your own homework. Um, and that's all I try to do. So, for those who have engaged with Aloha Authentic to this point and just me, um, very, very appreciative because I wouldn't have thought I got to this far. And sometimes my stories are just super portuguese on this side of the camera. Um, but understanding and engaging with your culture, I cannot elaborate enough that it's such a healing process. So even
Right.
if you're not Hawaiian, find out who you are. I mean, I'm so much more. I
Oh,
have a
yeah.
whole Samoan side to my family that I don't know. And
Mm,
that's the Pili side. So my grandpa came from Samoa. He ran away from Samoa when he was a kid. And there's so much culture and history
mm,
that I am so ignorant to. So as much as I'm learning about being Hawaiian, I need to learn about that as well. And I'm Haole, I'm this, I'm that. So I
sure.
think for all of us is just be inspired to find out who we are, and we don't really realize how much we will grow and heal in that process, and inspire others too.
There it is again. Hey, mahalo, Kamaka. This is such a refreshing conversation. I hope it's been refreshing for our listeners out there that are tuning in. That, Ike is mana, right? Knowledge is power. And that's what I hope comes from this podcast, that people are more engaged to learning about maybe a country they taught us or didn't teach us about to forget, and how that helps us be more pa'a with ourselves and more confident in our place in the world. So I really appreciate you, Kamaka, for doing this podcast and continue, I wish you the best in whatever you do and whatever endeavor you have. If you have links to the podcast when Aloha Authentic comes out again, I would want to post that. If you ever want to have Dr. Keanu again, and pick his
Oh
brain,
yes.
because just to kind of follow up on the thought and bring it back full circle, I kind of mentioned this introduction by Umi Perkins to Federico Linzerini and Dr. Keanu Sai about 3 months ago at Kamehameha Schools. And they were proposing basically um, going to the Permanent Court of Arbitration again with facts that they have found doing research called the Royal Commission of Inquiry. Um, and I think eventually would probably have led to something with the ICC. And I look in the news right now and, the ICC is being attacked and dismantled. And I wonder if maybe the research had something to do with like you know what I'm saying? Like I was just trying to connect the dot. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But just throwing it out there, just stay maka'ala, out there and do your homework. And, we all learn together because I do not know all things. I'm a student and hopefully everybody here can also develop the student mentality, right? You're always haumana no matter what. I never want to be called a kumu.
Mhm.
If I'm a kumu, then I still got more to learn, right?
It popped back in my mind. The reason why I brought up Ponoshim, Kalamai, for interjecting, but before I lose it
No,
again,
no, no, you're good, you're good.
Ponoshim had explained the 5 different acronyms of Aloha.
Uh,
And real fast. The first A, akahai, and his explanation was to be kind and comforting, and you want to be as kind as whatever you leave your hands. If you put your hand on something, you never leave a fingerprint. So he said, imagine if you had a white glove on your hand. No matter what you touch, you never leave a fingerprint. In essence, you're always leaving spaces better than when you got there. So in that essence of that action, you're being aloha. The L is lokahi, to be able to work with one another. And that I just feel is an art form within itself that deserves its own conversation, because I struggle with that every single day. But how to work with one another, and kind of just emphasizes on agreeing to disagree, and what needs to be done to move forward. Olu olu, to be comforting, but comforting in the sense of that you're holding this brand new baby, but you have this duality, and you find the balance between this ku and this hina, this strength that you need to hold the baby, so you have this strong stance, but you have the grace and the hina that you're comforting the baby at the same time. So finding a duality in your approach to anything is an essence of aloha. H is ha'aha'a. And ha'aha'a, what he did was, it's like this. You let out all your breath. And he sucked in all the air. And he said, from my understanding and how I took it was, being humble, ha'aha'a means to be humble, but humble is not the state of being full. Humble and humility is the process of you filling yourself up. The moment I feel that you think you're full and you think you know it all, you're not humble, and you're already knocking yourself down. But if you're approaching every situation as you're filling up this gas tank, and you're always filling it up, and you're never going to reach full, and you never want to reach full, because that's what keeps you as a constant student, always learning and being open to learn. To me, that's what he meant. That's what it meant for me. Ha'aha'a. And H, the last A, ahonui, being patient. And he was like, there's a difference between patience. Like, I wonder if this moment's going to happen. I don't know. I just got to kind of wait and see, I guess. And that's compared to ahonui, which is patience, as I don't know when this moment that I'm waiting for is going to happen. I don't know if it may be tomorrow, maybe 5 days, 5 years. It may not even be in my lifetime, but 5 generations from now. But that moment that I'm waiting for, I have the faith that one day it will happen. So my actions that I'm going to do from now till then will all be dedicated to knowing that moment will come to fruition. So you're not dilly-dallying or wondering or dabbling, like, I don't know if it's going to happen. You're confident, but you need that faith. And that's why, for me, my faith is just as important to my culture, because, like Kahu Ken said, it's one and the same. And how he said it just makes complete sense to me. So when we're going about this whole space of being full, or always knowing, or always learning, from the essence of antipilahi paki, that is always being aloha. So to always keep yourself open to learning. That's what my point was. See, I take this whole long way around. I'll forget it, and then come back to me some random point, and it will make sense.
No, my ka'i. I could not have said that better myself. So I think we're just going to end on that note. And mahalo everybody for being with us today. Kamaka, I really appreciate you. I still get chicken skin
Mahalo nui.
as we end this. So I appreciate learning with you, Palala, and wish you the best in your endeavors. Aloha.
Mahalo. Aloha.
Velina mai kako, and welcome to